What's up guys, this is Valentina with Bigger Creations, and today I'm going to show you how to EQ your backup vocals. So if you noticed, I actually have a slightly different lighting setup, and that's because I bought a new light. Super excited about this light. It's an Aperture 120D. So if you haven't heard about it, I'm gonna talk about it in a future video where I actually break down my entire YouTube setup and talk a little bit about how I do my videos. Let's just jump right into this. Today, I'm gonna show you guys how to EQ your backup vocals, because so many times it feels like an uphill battle where you're trying to make sure that your lead vocal has its own spot and that your backup vocals just support it but don't get lost. So today I'm gonna show you exactly how to EQ your backup vocals so that they're not competing with your lead vocals and purely supporting but still having a little bit of the spotlight. So let's jump right into it. So I'm gonna give you a little preview of what the backup vocals sound like when you EQ them this way. So I'll show you a verse and I'll show you the chorus here where I have a lot more backup vocals.
Time you call her running to get it. My mama, when you look at me like that, I be hearing songs with the choir in the backtrack, giving me those eyes, don't leave, baby, come back. Boy, you always know how to make my heart clap, clap. I can't even be mad for a minute, cause every time you smile, I forget it. Baby, I'm a strength and a weakness, and I fall for it every time.
And then here is the full-fledged chorus with all of the harmonies and background vocals.
Get it, I fall for you. Over again, you know I can't even help it. I fall for you. Every time you call her running to get it. I fall for you. Over again, you know I can't even help it. I fall for you. Every time you call her running to get it.
So I call this like the best friend in the backseat that doesn't know the lyrics to the song type of backup vocals. And basically it's just like certain words that you want to emphasize, and I've put those into a backup vocal. So that's what I've done here in the verse, and this is what they sound like.
Get it, I'm a mile when you look at me like that. I be hearing songs with the choir in the backtrack, giving me those eyes, don't leave, baby, come back. Boy, you always know how to make my heart clap, clap. I can't.
And then of course the chorus.
I fall for you. Over again, you know I can't even help it. I fall for you. Every time you call her running to get it.
So obviously I've done a lot of things to the backup vocal in my whole vocal chain. By the way, if you're interested in knowing the full vocal chain for my backup vocals, I did a video exclusively on that, and I'm gonna put a link to it right here and in the description. Check that out. But today we're just gonna focus on EQ and what I did in the EQ to make it so that these backup vocals don't interfere with the lead vocal. So basically I've set up two different EQs on my backup vocals. The first one is just a basic EQ, so we're gonna use this one as an example. Play this one just by itself.
Over again, you know I can't even help it.
Obviously I have my full vocal chain right here, but we're just gonna be focusing on these two plugins right here. And they're both EQs. You can do this the same with just this stock EQ, but I like using this one as a second EQ to kind of help me differentiate. So the first EQ, this is what I've got going on. And if I compare that here to my main vocal chain, I'll show you here. So this up here is my lead vocal EQ, and this is my backup vocal EQ. So you'll notice a little bit of a difference here. Obviously, these are the two ranges that I'm boosting. Notice how the places where I'm boosting and subtracting here are different than my lead vocal. And that's on purpose. Basically, you want your backup vocals to kind of sit in a different spot than your lead vocals so that frequency-wise, they're not competing with each other. This is just the first EQ. So this is just me getting rid of some frequencies that I don't want to emphasize on the backup vocals, and then just boosting the highs a little bit, because basically the meat of the vocal is going to be in the lead vocals. And so this one doesn't need the meat. This just needs that high end that helps it feel a little bit more wide in addition to that lead vocal. That's just so you kind of get an idea of the difference between how my first EQ on my main vocals is versus my backup vocals. So here, basically I've subtracted some of those frequencies that I don't like, and obviously I've rolled off the low end because I don't need that in there. My voice is not very low, So I can just get rid of all of those frequencies here. We're even gonna get rid of more frequencies with the second EQ. Now that we've got this EQ in place, I like to use this second EQ that's from Waves. Basically, this may look a little intimidating because there are a lot of different knobs. And again, based on the EQ tool or plugin that you're using, it might have a different interface like this. But essentially, this whole left side right here is essentially the same thing as this right here. What it's doing is dividing the low frequencies with this, the low mid frequencies with this right here, and then your high mid frequencies right here, and your high frequencies right here. Basically what we're doing here is we're selecting the range that we want to affect, and then in the dB knob, you'll see there's a dB knob on every single frequency range. That's where we're adjusting the volume. So essentially we're going up or down with these arches. And then this other knob here, you'll notice here that there are some symbols that show how narrow or how wide your curve is. So essentially it's this same thing here, you're just deciding with a knob instead. So on my low frequencies, I lowered my lower frequencies around the 300 range by about 9.9 dB, so about 10 dB. Basically something pretty aggressive here. What I'm doing here mostly with this is subtracting, and then I'm just emphasizing, I'm boosting the high frequencies again. So you'll notice here, I've got negative 3.7, and I've made all of these pretty wide. I don't want them to be super narrow because I'm not actually pinpointing anything specific. I'm just trying to get the whole general range down lower. Because what I'm trying to do is get rid of more frequencies and just keep those high frequencies in the backup vocals to basically emphasize what I've already done with the first EQ. So I've lowered the lower mid range by 3.7 and the high mid frequencies by about 6.4. And then finally, I'm adding some more frequencies here. So I've actually boosted it by almost 4 dB in the high range. So I'm going to show you the difference of what it sounds like with just the first EQ. If I turn off this second EQ, and keep in mind, I still have my full vocal chain here, so there's a lot of other things happening, but you'll still be able to notice the difference on this EQ. So I'm going to play it again, and I'm going to toggle the second EQ on and off, and you're going to notice, one, obviously we're getting rid of frequencies with this second EQ, so you're going to notice a little bit of a volume reduction when I turn it on. But keep in mind, we're getting rid of frequencies, so that's why the volume's getting reduced. We make up for that with everything else in the vocal chain. So don't worry about volume. You're going to notice it a little bit. But what I want you to listen to is actually frequency-wise. You're going to notice a lot of that deeper and more of that mid-range vocal is not going to be there anymore once I add this second EQ. And it's going to feel a lot more top-heavy. So listen closely.
Over again, you know I can't even help it. Every time you call, I'm running to get it. Over again, you know I can't even help it. Every time you call, I'm running to get it.
So you can really tell when I toggle it on and off. Basically, I'm taking away what I've subtracted on the lower end when I bypass this, and you can really tell the difference. And it starts to sound a little bit more like a lead vocal and a little less like a backup vocal, which what we want it to be is a backup vocal so that the lead vocal can really take the spotlight. So now I'm gonna play it along with the lead vocals, and I'm gonna actually turn on all of the backup vocals, and let's just solo this and I'll let you listen to it.
I fall for you. Over again, you know I can't even help it. I fall for you. Every time you call, I'm running to get it. I fall for you. Over again, you know I can't even help it. I fall for you. Over again, you know I can't even help it. I fall for you. Every time you call, I'm running to get it. I fall for you. Over again, you know I can't even help it. I fall for you. Every time you call, I'm running to get it.
So basically that's it. That's all you have to worry about with EQ. Just make sure it's not really interfering with that lead vocal so that it has its own space in the whole frequency spectrum. And that way, when you make your vocals wider, like by adding a doubler, or if you pan them like I've done here just slightly, because it's those higher frequencies, it's just gonna be something that really stands out. And because you're keeping the frequencies very restricted to just those high frequencies, they're a lot easier to control and stand out in the mix because they're not in the same place as your lead vocals. So they'll stand out without having to boost them to be super, super loud. You can keep them at a regular dB level, but still have them stand out. Lastly, I'm just gonna highlight one little extra tip since we're talking about backup vocals. Something that I really, really like to do in my choruses is to add basically a copy of that same lead vocal. And sometimes not the whole vocal, it's just certain parts that I wanna emphasize and just put it under my backup vocal chain. So you'll notice here, I've got my lead vocal here for the chorus. This is what it is. And I've copied pieces of it, that's why it's chopped up. Yes, I've copied those pieces onto a backup vocal chain channel track. So listen to this.
I fall for you over again, you know I can't even help it. I fall for you.
And it's really just because I wanted to emphasize that I fall for you, but I didn't want to put a harmony in there. I just wanted it to be, you know, unison. So to make it a little bit wider and add a little bit more presence to it, I added a copy of that phrase onto a backup vocal chain and, you know, just kind of mixed it to be with the lead vocal. So it gives it a little bit more presence and sounds a little bit more chorusy without having to add a ton of backup vocals throughout the entire chorus to do that. Well, there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future videos. And of course, if you ever have any questions or want to see more content, check me out on Instagram and let me know what you want to learn next. Let me know in the comments. Keep making beats.